Well, hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining with us today, and thank you for participating in the IC3 Festival. My name is Dan Marschner. I'm the Director of International Admission at Loyola Marymount University. I'm very excited to be joined by some really phenomenal colleagues, one of whom is at Loyola Marymount University with me, Branden Grimmett, another who is at Santa Clara University, Rose Nakamoto, and then hopefully we'll be joined by our principal, Anuradha Handa, here in a few minutes as well. But again, thank you so much for being with us today to talk about adapting career development to the virtual world. Branden and I are with Loyola Marymount University, which is a medium-sized university of just under 10,000 students located in Los Angeles, California, in the United States. But I'll go ahead, Branden, do you want to introduce yourself more fully?
Yes, hi, good evening, good morning, depending on where you are. My name is Branden Grimmett, and I serve as the Associate Provost for Career and Professional Development. This is the Career Center on our campus. As Dan mentioned, we're based in Los Angeles, and we work with a range of employers, not just in Los Angeles, but throughout the state. It looks like some folks can't hear. If that's true for just me, let me know. Otherwise, I'll try to tweak my sound if that's a problem, but it's nice to meet all of you.
Thank you, Branden. Rose, would you like to introduce yourself?
Of course. Good morning and good evening. Pleased to be here. My name is Rose Nakamoto, the director of the Career Center at Santa Clara University. We're in Silicon Valley in California, just north of LMU, in the same state. And we also work with a range of organizations and employers, largely based in Silicon Valley. But we also...
Okay. Thank you. Okay, so Rose, thank you for your introduction. I believe Principal Handa is here now. Is that correct?
Oh.
If she is here, if you can go ahead and introduce yourself. Okay, well, we can go ahead and move forward with the presentation. So Branden, I believe you're first. Hopefully everyone can hear him okay. But Branden and Rose are both experts in career development, and so they're going to talk briefly about how career development has been adapted in this very unique way. So Branden, would you like to take it over?
Absolutely. Yeah, what I want to first start by talking about is the way our office adapted to the realities of COVID. So, as we all know, this created a major disruption to our operations as universities. But one of the things that our particular career center had going for us, and I think a lot of other university career centers had, was that we had a robust suite of technology available to us. And there on the slide, I've indicated just a few of the different platforms that we had in place, such as Handshake, LinkedIn Learning, BMOC, and PeopleGrow. And I'll describe a little bit about some of those platforms. But this allowed us to continue doing our work remotely and serving our students directly through that remote setting. Handshake, as some of you may know, is a system. It looks like some people cannot hear me, so I'm going to unplug my headphones. See if that helps. Is that helpful?
Actually, that's better. Yeah, that sounds better.
So one of the things that we had in place beforehand was that we had Handshake, LinkedIn, BMOC, and PeopleGrow in place. Handshake in particular is the platform that both Rose and I use at each of our universities. And we were able to still connect with hundreds of thousands of employers. So Handshake is a platform that is currently available to over 2,000 universities, primarily in the US, but they've also started to expand into the UK. That platform also has around 500,000 employers on the system, and in total, between all the different universities using the system, about 15 million students and alumni at those different universities. We immediately saw a dip in the job postings, even though our students were able to continue using that platform. What we saw prior to COVID was about 10,000 jobs posted at any given point in time. But right after COVID hit in March or April, we saw about a 25% decline in our job postings. And so that became a little bit of a challenge for us in terms of making sure that we could still offer internships and practical experiences for our students, I'm happy to say that as of a couple months ago, the volume of jobs have rebounded, and we're now seeing the same volume of opportunities that we saw prior to COVID. So it's taken about 6 or 7 months for us to build back that employer base. The other thing that I just want to mention in terms of how we've adapted to career development in a COVID era in a virtual environment is that we find that networking has become a little bit easier for our students, and I'll talk a little bit more about this in the next slide, not quite yet. But what we're discovering is that our students have always been a little bit anxious around networking. All of the challenges of introducing yourself, handing your business card to someone, having the confidence and the polish to be able to tell your story in what might be a high pressure environment. What we're seeing now is that students are working from home, just like all of us are, because we're having this conference virtually. And what that has provided to our students is more availability of our alumni, more availability of some of our employers that have recruited our students. And we've gotten really good feedback from our students that they're able to connect with senior level executives and recruiters in ways that they may not have been able to do that before. So we have been really pleased, I think, with the activity and the motivation and the engagement that we've seen from our students, because as you probably know, they are much more comfortable with this virtual environment than many of the individuals working at universities who may be of different generations. And then the final thing that I just wanted to say is that our students have been really innovative and resilient. So they have adapted pretty quickly. They've given us some really good feedback, and we continue to collect that feedback in our programming. Um, but we do everything with our students and also with our alumni. And so what we've discovered is that we've created a lot of programming that brings together our alumni, brings together our students, so that they can create kind of a circular loop for networking purposes. For those that are controlling the slide, if you could go to the next slide, Dan. Here I wanted to provide a little bit of our students' feedback and also our alumni feedback. So these are two quotes that actually came from the post-event surveys that we administered to both our students, but also our alumni that participated in networking events. So for those of you that may be on this call and thinking about how you can engage your students, this feedback came from two different networking events that we provided to our students and alumni, where we used the Zoom video conferencing platform. And instead of having an in-person networking experience, we had a virtual experience where one of the staff members from the Career Center at the university moderated basically a discussion where each of the alumni were able to talk about their career path from college at our university to their current role. If they were hiring for positions or if they thought they would be hiring in the future, they could describe what that process was like for their company. And then most importantly, the students would get an opportunity to introduce themselves to that employer and also to ask really smart questions of that recruiter. So these pieces of feedback came from our students. You'll see the first one at the top, the student talking about what an amazing experience they had and that it increased their confidence. And I just wanted to point out that this was a first-year student. So what we also saw was that we saw students from all 4 years of college, but we saw a little bit more activity from our underclass students who had just begun because they had been doing nothing but virtual education since they joined. The second quote there is from one of our graduates, one of our alumni that participated in a slightly different event. And it was just really good to see that the alumni that came, even in the past, if they had come in person, they were still really responsive and receptive to this new format in the virtual world. So for those of you that may be anxious about, reaching back out to speakers or experts because they're moving from an in-person to a virtual setting, know that many of these speakers and alumni and recruiters were actually quite impressed with the students because they got to see everyone at the same time on that Zoom video call. Dan, if you could go to the next slide for me. And then here what I want to emphasize is that even as we're in a remote setting, the skills that our students are learning by being in a virtual classroom, by showing up and trying to engage their classmates in a practical way, in a way that creates learning and promotes collaboration, all of those skills that the students have exercised in that virtual classroom actually have a very strong correlation with what employers will be looking for from those students in the future. So what we're seeing is that students are able to build some confidence by having some assistance, by having that camera on and looking into the camera. You're also able to utilize some of your notes and to have the research in front of you, so that as you're asking those good questions, you can be prepared for these networking sessions as a student. And what I would say to the the secondary school or high school guidance counselors, this is something that is not only preparation for postgraduate employment, but really preparation for college. We know that some students may be entering an online educational environment, and that preparation for how students show up to the classroom is also a strong preparation for what those employers are looking for from a recruitment standpoint. So those are just a few highlights from my experience leading a career center at a fairly large institution at LMU with Dan Marschner. And I know that next I'm going to hear from my fabulous colleague, Rose Nakamoto, perhaps about how some of these skills that students are learning and exercising in the virtual classroom can also benefit future hiring trends that we're going to see down the road in a COVID era. Rose?
Yes, thank you, Branden. Thank you, Daniel, for advancing the slides. I'm going to go ahead. For those of you who may not, there's been some comments about the size of the slides. So I just sent a link to the article that refers to these skills. And so just to continue building off of what Branden shared about the changing nature of the in-demand skills. I mean, our world is changing very rapidly. The changing nature of skills was already something that was taking place pre-COVID. But given how fast the workforce is changing, how many sectors have been disrupted coming through the pandemic, many professional organizations, the Chronicle, the ed tech, and sort of early talent space are really talking about, and the World Economic Forum in particular that this comes from, is really talking about what this means for our current learners and students and how they're going to have to enter into a very much a changed world. And of these top 10 skills, one of the things I want to really call out is this is the first time in all of my years in higher education and the early talent space where I've seen resilience, stress tolerance, and flexibility listed among the top in-demand skills. And so as Branden said, for all of you working with high school students who are entering into the college space, resiliency, stress tolerance, and flexibility is certainly something they will have to utilize in their university setting, whether they're in a hybrid modality or in person or online. But this is absolutely something that students can showcase to employers. And I think this is one thing, with internships being moved online, sometimes canceled, with shifting nature of how the work is being done, there's an opportunity for students to really reflect on and to communicate powerfully what lessons they're learning during this pandemic, about themselves, about their sort of ability to adapt and be flexible. And so that's absolutely an asset that students can take with them and carry forward in their storytelling with employers. I think some of the other skills that I want to just point out here have to do with leadership and social influence, critical thinking and analysis, active learning, and the ability to utilize learning strategies, social intelligence and emotional intelligence. So these are some of the skills that are going to be really very much in demand. And the other piece of this is that the World Economic Forum had reported within the next few years, over 50% of the skills 50% of individuals will need to be reskilled. I mean, many industries are being disrupted. As Branden said, this is a very different moment than we were in 10 years ago with the last major economic recession in the United States. There are quite a few industries that are actually thriving right now that are hiring at the college level, but there is still a decrease in the amount of hiring overall, at least that we're still seeing at Santa Clara. And the skills that individuals will need to enter the workforce is going to look different. So if you wouldn't mind, Daniel, advancing to the next slide. What I want to kind of transition into is some trends that, Branden alluded to, the savviness of students to be able to utilize technology to access resources and to make connections. I wanted to share a quick snapshot both of our campus at Santa Clara University, as well as just some broad trends from Handshake's COVID survey. And so if I'm hoping you can see these slides, but a couple of things about Santa Clara. We very quickly, when the COVID pandemic hit, we were seeing an uptick in students' sense of urgency around access to career support. So our office did a survey of our students and asked, of the hierarchy of need right now, from support with online learning to mental health and well-being, where does career resources fall for you? And 75% of our students who responded to our survey said that career support and access to resources was urgent or important. And so that was really a call to action for our Career Center. And I imagine our campus was not alone. We know that students are going into college now more and more with an eye for their future, a focus on outcomes and how their education will propel their access to social capital and upward mobility. So the desire during an uncertain time that career be of significant importance was not a surprise to us, but it really was a call to action to us. And so a few months later, the provost office on our campus also did a survey asking students, what are the most in-demand resources that you're utilizing right now? And the Career Center, our office, was listed as the top 5 among about 30 other campus resources. And so one of the things that we did to pivot into COVID was to leverage channels beyond just our University Career Center channels. So we partnered up with our university marketing communications team to do a series of LinkedIn Lives. These are live discussions. We would invite recruiters, alums, students, my staff, and my office to talk about how to search for internships, how to be resilient when your internship is canceled, to sort of tips and advice from alums who are working or recent grads, insights from recruiters about how to navigate this new space during COVID and how to access virtual opportunities. So I'm really trying to leverage the whole university network to engage and kind of wrap students or understand how to navigate resources and really help them feel that they have a career center and a university who's in their corner and cares about their future. Something else I want to report, just nationwide trends from Handshake. And this is no surprise. We do see in the last economic recession, we did also see an uptick in students being interested in graduate school. So I think while that stat isn't on this slide, that is certainly something that we're seeing on our campus and interest from our students. We're also seeing students, a primary driver for them to engage a career center is access to connections to opportunities. So how can I engage with employers who are hiring for internships, for jobs, for fellowships? That is a primary driver, I would say, for our students in this moment. The other thing is I think we're seeing a greater flexibility. About 82% of students are considering a job outside of their career path. And again, 57% of students pursuing graduate school. If you wouldn't mind going to the next slide. I want to share a little snapshot. Branden talked about hiring and how initially when the pandemic hit, there was a decrease in overall engagement with employers. And that was absolutely the case for us at Santa Clara. I would say we saw about a 30 to 40% drop in April of 2020 with our postings and Handshake from the year before. And what's really encouraging this fall, we saw about a 40% increase. So about a restorative nature of how employers were posting opportunities. We saw a huge uptick in virtual remote opportunities being posted, both internships and part-time jobs, which is really encouraging. This fall, for those who may not be able to read all the pieces on the slide, we had about 150 unique employers engage on our campus at Santa Clara virtually through Handshake. As Branden said, we were fortunate enough to have technology in place to actually allow us to support students virtually. Handshake, which allows us to have students schedule virtual appointments with our career coaches. Handshake also launched a virtual career fair platform that allows students to engage with employers in a very different way, actually, than in the in-person traditional career fairs, where, most of our career fairs we host about 9 a year and 3 in the fall. And normally there's long lines, there's large masses of students that turn up to engage with 100 or so employers at a time. In the virtual space, students can actually sign up for individual video appointments and interviews with employers. So we had about 2,300 one-to-ones, one student to one employer video interviews happen in the fall through our 3 major career fairs, and about 2,700 small group interview sessions between students and employers through these major career fairs. And that was we had industries from about 43 different industries engage with us. So that was really, really promising and very positive for our students to have access to so many opportunities. And finally, my last slide, I just want to highlight some details about the COVID search process. And one of the things that we're really encouraging students, as Branden referenced, how resilient our students are and have been, and I would say that that's the case at Santa Clara, but really important for students, any student right now, whether you're an incoming first-year student thinking about internships or eventually when you prepare to graduate, students really should be thinking about multiple plans of attack. They should be developing a plan A, a plan B, and a plan C, and be actively pursuing all three of those plans simultaneously. So this is a snapshot of one example of a graduating student who might actually be looking, their plan A might be to look at internships. So some medium to large employers do hire students on as interns even when they're graduating. So some companies will indicate that a recent grad who's eligible for their internships can be up to a year post-graduation. So a student might decide, I'll apply for an internship with a medium to large company, knowing that there could be a likelihood that that could convert to something full-time afterwards. A plan B could be for a student to look at jobs and gigs. So that be part-time, full-time virtual opportunities, leveraging tools like Handshake. Handshake actually posts and updates their 500 companies that are hiring students right now. So that's a list of companies for any Handshake school. That's actually part of the Handshake's blog. So any student can Google this and should be able to find information about the top companies that are hiring college students right now. And then a plan C might be simultaneously looking at research opportunities, graduate areas of study, or service learning. So be cultivating multiple plans, be pursuing multiple plans, and to see what that yields you. There's a greater possibility for securing an opportunity. And the final message is for those of you working with students, whether they're really thinking about they're going to be pre-med, they want to go to medical school, or they want to go to law school, or they have an idea of an industry they want to work in, or they really don't know, and they're wanting to explore as a first-year student, to encourage them to think about no opportunity is too small. In times of economic uncertainty, take every experience, every opportunity, and learn what you can from that and have a really positive attitude. So no opportunity is too small during times of economic uncertainty. And so with that, Daniel, I'll go ahead and hand it back to you. I think we have a few more pieces of content to share, and we want to open up for Q&A as well.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Rose. And again, my name is Dan Marschner. So I work primarily with admissions from the university perspective, but I did want to share some insights we've received in working with secondary school partners, and certainly a lot of things that will be familiar to you in the audience. But I just wanted to reinforce that in the midst of a really unprecedented time, we've seen a lot of benefits from being in an online environment. And I think that really speaks to how students have really been able to take advantage of the incredible resources and opportunities that come within this virtual environment. And so you can see a few points here for the expansion of academic resources. I mean, for example, at LMU, we've been able to have an incredible number of guest speakers come into our classrooms and connect directly with our students that would not have been possible in a traditional environment. And I think in speaking to students and counselors, I get the sense that they have been able to take advantage of resources from around the world in ways that maybe they had not quite considered in the past. And also I think it helps to expand those global horizons. So we certainly know that students are considering many different countries when they're considering their options for future graduate study, whether it be staying in South Asia or considering opportunities in the United Kingdom or the US more traditionally, but also obviously expanding opportunities in places like Australia, Hong Kong, Singapore, other parts of the world as well. And so I think because you have environments like the ones that IC3 has hosted, where we've had the opportunity to bring universities from around the world together at one point, that's really helped to expand the horizons and the possibilities for students. And I think it really helps them to understand what opportunities might be out there in ways that maybe they had not before. Also heard tremendous stories about students who've really taken advantage of this time to discover new skills and talents, whether it be through Coursera courses or through other opportunities that they have demonstrated that they have a real hunger for learning. And I certainly think that's just something that's exciting for university admissions representatives to see just how well students have taken advantage of this time. I've always been impressed, for example, the amount of students who've talked about how they have adapted in this moment to think about how they can really be a positive influence on the world around them. So students who, for example, are taking their time and energy to volunteer, to try to respond to the pandemic in some way. So that's just one example of some of the self-directed learning we've seen. But again, I think it really just demonstrates that the students are hungry for new opportunities and shown that in lots of different ways. And also, I think it really just speaks to how the university search process has changed for students. I mean, obviously, you have a chance to connect with schools in ways you never could before. So, traditionally at LMU, we've always welcomed students to campus and really enjoyed that one-on-one experience when we've had that opportunity. But also recognize that not all students can come to campus, and not all students can appreciate that opportunity. And so, I think what this new environment has indicated for students is that it's given them a way to connect with universities and explore institutions from around the world from the comfort of their own home. And so obviously the importance of things like virtual tours or virtual engagement sessions have been absolutely crucial. And we've seen anything from more traditional introductory sessions to individual institutions to sessions that talk about the application process more generally, specifically in the US, but around the world as well. To actually connecting with professors at specific institutions and learning about their expertise. And again, these are things that existed previously, but I think have really expanded their influence and their impact in this particular environment. And I think it also speaks to the importance of students really recognizing, first of all, the amount of opportunities that are out there, but also the really crucial role that secondary school counselors play in this university search. So, as a student was maybe thinking about a small number of institutions maybe previously, now they're thinking about a really, really broad world and understanding those options in a different way than they were in the past. And so again, I think it really speaks to the really crucial role that secondary school counselors play in helping students understand how to really consider these options and what would be the ones that would be most beneficial to them. And obviously thinking about things like career outcomes in ways that maybe they hadn't before. So thinking about countries that would be welcoming the students and give students the opportunity to get work experience or residency after studying. And there's a lot of different things that are out there now that I think it really expands the scope of the work of a secondary school counselor. But again, really just reinforces how crucial the work that those in the audience who do work directly with students really is. So again, just tremendous gratitude and appreciation from all of my colleagues and all the great work that you do. So I know that was a rather brief introduction to these topics, and we certainly can discuss them much larger. And Principal Handa is here as well. So would you like to speak a little bit to your experience in the school?
Absolutely. A very, very good evening to everyone. So I'm sorry I got in late because of some connection issues. So myself, Anuradha Handa, Principal GD Goenka School. And I think we are deliberating on a very, very interesting topic, and that is how this particular COVID period has had an impact and how the counseling and the opportunities that the students have got. So with regard to that, surely I'd like to share some of my experiences, which probably might be of some help to the viewers. So here, as far as the school is concerned, as we know that school is a place where the children from the age of 3 to the age of 18, for good 14 years, they spend in school. And there is no replacement for physical connections and being in the physical place. But at the same time, this particular period of 8 months has brought in a lot of change in the thinking of the way we can function. So as a school in this particular period, especially for senior students, we have seen them expanding their horizons. As teachers, earlier, what we always wanted, a flipped model of teaching, allowing children to be being flexible in terms of, they learning at their own pace. So all of that we always wanted to do, but were not able to succeed to that extent, which we have been able to do now. We've been pushed to that point where asynchronous model and synchronous model and flipped learning is happening. Differentiated teaching, learning also is taking place with a lot of ease. Simple things like starting your day early for a group of students and continuing with the day longer with another group. So all of that has come our way because of the usage of the digital platform that we are on. And as far as the exposure of the students in school is concerned, I think that has been tremendous because our students have been in touch with a lot of global opportunities, whether it is about summer programs or career counseling. They were part of the IC3 virtual career fair, where we had an exposure of more than 120 universities. I mean, we could not imagine that our students sitting here in India would be able to spend time and learn from people around the world. So I think we have really expanded our boundaries. Our students have started working on portfolios. The involvement of alumni has been tremendous wherever they are, because now it's all about, you're just making that one connection. So whether it is training of students, whether it is career guidance, whether it is exposure to the universities in India or abroad, all of it has come a long way in this short period of a good 7 to 8 months. And now these opportunities are only going to grow. You see, we've learned certain things which in the time to come are not going to go away. The hybrid model that we are talking of in the days to come. So that is surely going to take us a long way. So we are looking at more opportunities coming the way of the students, and students having a greater understanding of the life after school. As a school, we've always all schools, IC3 is making that conscious effort of having the career guidance starting at an early age, so that children are able to fix and find their interests correctly, and build the right aspiration, and accordingly have the right preparation. So I think this really has been the preparation. I mean, we've started with student-led clubs where students have prepared their own curriculum to guide the juniors. So this has been a boon. Of course, we are not saying that this should continue, but what we have learned in these 8 months and the way the horizons have expanded, this is surely a turnaround for children to look for a brighter future and better guidance. I think this is something that I feel I would like to add here. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much. Really appreciate that perspective. And again, thanks to all of you for having followed along so far. We'd love to hear from you and what questions that you may have for our panelists. Again, thank you for the interest in this topic. So again, if you want to use the chat and have some questions there, that'd be great. I guess for Branden and Rose, as students are considering more longer term kind of careers and goals and things like that, as you're working with even incoming students, is there advice that you give them for students who may not have even started studying with you yet, and how can they take advantage of the Career Center resources and experiences there?
Maybe I'll start, and because some people are having audio problems, I'll try to type part of my response into the chat as well. But one of the things that I've tried to stress with students is that everyone's going to need a COVID story. So whether it's your application to college, or your interview for graduate school, or even your interview or networking conversations with employers, everyone's experiencing the same challenges right now, and we know that some populations have more hurdles to overcome than others. But the challenge will be, how do you persevere? To Rose's point about the skill sets around resiliency, how do you get through the challenges and have something positive to say about what you learned about yourself, about what you want to do in the world, and perhaps how you can make things better for future generations? So what I would advise guidance counselors and also students that may be listening to this is, think about the challenges that you're facing and how you're developing skills in the midst of those challenges. How are you refining your communication? How are you building your resiliency and your confidence in the midst of obstacles that you're facing? And for those that are guiding students, how can we build learning opportunities out of those challenges? So it goes back to my point about the different skills that students are building in a remote setting that have correlation with what employers are looking for. But I would say, think about how your story around COVID is going to be unique to you based upon the resources you have available to you, and also how you're kind of turning around the situation for yourself and whatever.
Yeah, that's great, Branden. I think that's absolutely right. I don't think there's a need to feel pressure that a story needs to look a certain way. Like, well, what happened if my summer experience was canceled or I was sheltering with my family? I think there's a lot that you can utilize online to support ongoing learning and exploration, even if it's taking an online course, to helping a family business. If that's the case, I think there's no one right cookie cutter answer to what your COVID story should be. And that actually dovetails into my point, which is about pressure and the hyper competitive landscape that at times can be the educational space. So it has become increasingly pressurized to get into college. We know the pressure to get into the right colleges and the universities. My husband is a guidance counselor and works with students getting into college, and we talk about this quite frequently. And oftentimes what we see in higher ed is that pressure trickles up. So the pressure once students get to college continues to achieve, to excel, to access opportunities. And so my advice would be is to really encourage students once they get to college and to make sure they give them space and permission to explore and to try things on. And I had talked about no opportunity is too small in times of economic uncertainty, and that is absolutely the name of the game here. So whether it's a part-time virtual job, a gig opportunity, a volunteer experience, a leadership opportunity you're going to take advantage of on your campus, and everyone has a different reality. So if it has to do with needing to work and find remote employment, I think you make the most of it. What can you learn? What can you take away? And to Branden's point, how can you see that in a positive light? And build and use those experiences to help propel you forward and to articulate that powerfully to an employer, no matter how small the opportunity was, to really see the positive in it. And the final thing I would just add is whenever you have an opportunity to help others and to be a leader for others, I encourage you to consider that. So for example, what connections might you have that you can pay it forward to a classmate in your college? What ways can you get involved on your campus community to help make improvements? So I'll give you an example. At Santa Clara, we're seeing an uptick in transfer student admissions. And so because of that, as an institution, we're trying to build resources and infrastructure to support transfer students, because historically we've not had a large population of those students on our campus. And so I've actually was just working with a group of students that have formed a coalition to help the university inform how they build resources and infrastructure to meet the unique needs of those students. And that's a really great opportunity for a student to say, look how the landscape is changing. And as a university, what are we doing to respond to that? And as a student, getting involved with campus leadership to actually create policy and resources. So be a leader, find ways to contribute to whatever community that you're a part of.
Well, thank you, Branden. Thank you, Rose. Principal Handa, I'm just wondering if you would like to talk about so some of the things that you really feel are the most crucial messages for students right now. What are the things that really you feel the students need to hear in this moment?
Okay, so I would take it further from what Rose was just saying. Children looking at, you see, there is a lot of disparity when we look at the social structure and availability of infrastructure and facilities. I'm heading a school where children are fortunate enough to have all the resources and access to education. But there are a large number of such students who lack that. So this is also an opportunity for students, definitely to be leaders in that landscape. And more than that, it is such a fulfilling experience. We recently undertook an exercise of giving 103 tablets to the girls of an underprivileged school because, they had lost access to education. When the lockdown was there, the single device that their parents had, for some time they could continue. But when the parents started to go out to work, these children were without any resources and they completely got disconnected. And it's not just about education. It is also about their mental health. Suddenly, when a student loses everything, So at this point of time, my message to the school students would be that use this time as an opportunity to build connections with nature, with people, and in whichever way you can learn and contribute to the society. I think this will take them a long way in life because these experiences will not only enrich their portfolio, but they would rather enrich their personality. I think this is the best time to go out and take that ownership and responsibility. And I am seeing that coming very well in children in general, where they are going beyond just being students of the school, they are connecting themselves with the larger community and society. So, such times are most wonderful opportunity for this.
Thank you. And again, thank you so much to everyone who've attended this session. We're coming to the end of our session. I want to thank you for our phenomenal panelists who've been part of this presentation as well. Just want to briefly, and we do have a minute or two. I don't know if you want to have any parting thoughts. Branden, would you have anything you want to make sure a takeaway for people in the audience?
Just to first of all, thank you, Dan, for hosting and for moderating. But also just to remember that we're all available. So, I'm available on LinkedIn, and Rose, I'm sure the two of you are available as well. And so reach out to us if you have questions about anything that we shared in terms of programming or ideas, and share resources or other research that.
Thank you. Anything you want to share, Rose?
No, I just wholeheartedly agree. I'm on LinkedIn, and so if you would like to find me there, I'd be happy to answer any additional questions. And it was a pleasure to be with you all this morning and this evening, depending on where you sit. Thank you, Daniel, for hosting us.
Thank you. Principal Handa, any parting words or any parting thoughts?
So I think the parting note would be that let's hope for normalcy to return, and all the learnings that we have from this time of COVID, let's take the positive things ahead and drop the negative and move on.
Again, thank you so much, and I hope you enjoyed the rest of the IC3 Festival. Thank you, everyone.